Hey there, my name is Jay McBride, and this is my presentation for Intro to Communications. I'm all right, a little bit of a seafood allergy. Looks like I'm going to live, so things are good. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. Some of the topics I'm going to cover today are subjects and character of our guy, Jesse from the Adam Driver TED Talk. And under subject and her character, I'm going to do that by discussing perceiving ourselves and improving your self-concept. I'm also going to touch on communication context to answer one of the questions in the email that we had for this assignment. All right, so perceiving ourselves. Each of us has a self, our own personal construction of who we are. All right, so let's break down Jesse's self a little bit from the video. I mean, he describes where he's from or the city he's in as a radioactive wasteland. He says Danny's hand-me-down jeans are gone, right? So we're implying that, you know, he's got hand-me-down clothes, you know, he doesn't get new clothing and stuff like that. You know, these are perceptions of himself. The navy blue polo shirt, the one that kind of looks good on me, but has a hole near the butt where it got caught on a chain link fence. But it's not even a big deal because I tucked that part in and you can't even see it. All right, this statement to me says a lot. You know, there's a little bit of pride in there, and I haven't mentioned down here, there's some optimism going on right there, you know, for his perceiving his self. You know, it kind of looks good on me, but it's okay because I took that part in, you know. And this is kind of a, what this makes me wonder is, you know, the reference to the shirt that he hides that part, that blemish, that part he might be embarrassed of, he tucks it in. You know, what other parts of his life does he do that with? You know, how many attributes or aspects of his life does he tuck away so that other people don't see and, you know, puts on a good front so that he looks good, or not appears good, but, you know, so that he can be seen with respect. He goes on to talk about respect later on, and I'll get to that. And people who'd rather do what they do in the city in the dark, right? So it's not a good place. You know, he talks about the old lady or a woman eating, you know, chewed up food out of a styrofoam container. You know, there's a lot that, and to me, implies homelessness, you know, low economy. So we got a toxic environment from the radioactive wasteland, right? It's something that's corrosive, it's something that's detrimental. It degrades his quality of life. He's embarrassed. There's some shame. You know, his father's an alcoholic. Economic status. I mean, he's insinuated that all throughout these few statements. But like I said, there's a little bit of optimism there. Check my notes, make sure I didn't forget anything. Nope, we're on track so far. Cool. The next thing I'm going to get into, continuing perceiving ourselves, is the extended self. In addition to individual attributes, your self-concept includes an extended self that focuses on your perceptions of yourself as a participant in a relationship or as a part of a group. Now, in this case, he really uses this part right here, participant in a relationship, right? He's talking about his father, the janitor man. This is how he sees himself in his relationship to his father. He's someone who watches out for his dad, right? He talks about Batman. He talks about, you know, how he puts on that bulletproof vest. You know, how many times has he probably covered his father up when he came home and passed out drunk? You know, how many times has he probably, you know, wiped his father's vomit from his face, or even changed his urine-covered clothing when he comes home, you know, passed out drunk on the floor or the couch. He sees himself as someone who protects his father, someone who watches out for his dad, you know, his caretaker. That, to me, that implies why he sees himself as Batman. You know, he's this guy who watches out for his dad. Then still perceiving ourselves, moving on to self-concept. Your self-concept includes all of your perceptions of yourself. It reflects our attempts to explain ourselves to ourselves, right? He says, up high with the gargoyles, right? It's one way he kind of describes himself. He says, I'm all alone, right? I'm watching, I'm waiting, like an eagle. No, Yeah, like an eagle. Remember that part? He sees himself as someone who does a lot of observing, who's kind of quiet, kind of reserved, you know, standoffish. Maybe it's some isolation is going on with his family, with his father and stuff like that, right? He's a little secluded, a little isolated, a little outcast, a little pushed off. No one sees the bat. There is no bat. When he's talking about the fight with the three good-for-nothings, right? One of them says, there is no bat. That's his perception, I think, of himself. That's what he's portraying through this spoken word piece that Jesse's doing. He's not going around actually telling people he's Batman, right? This is how he views himself with his father. A superhero, a part of him that nobody sees because he's up high with the gargoyles. You know, I said, I'm all alone, and I'm watching, and I'm waiting like an eagle, right? Move on to the next part here. Now we have improving self-concept, improving your self-concept. Despite these sources of self-concepts, you are not fated to be shaped wholly by your family, culture, surroundings. You can take positive steps to shape and strengthen your self-concept. And he does that throughout this video. You know, just like earlier, you know, he talked about his blue polo shirt, but he still looks good in it. He tucks it in, right? So he's kind of talking himself up a little bit. And he says, no one whips out a belt and hits Batman. No one calls Batman simple or stupid or skinny. They got nothing but respect. Not like afraid respect, but like respect, right? So he's showing that he doesn't want to be feared. He just wants to be looked up to. You know, because I mean, there's a difference there, if you ask me. So, you know, he's talking about he wants to be respected. So he talks himself up to make himself feel better. And I think, you know, that works because someone who lives in those types of conditions and has that, is thrown and is subject to that type of lifestyle and that sort of neglect and abuse and probably some other things going on. You know, he does a pretty good job at like talking himself up as this Batman character. Improving your self-concept continued. Positive self-talk, right, which is how I was just kind of mentioned, I was just talking about. When you consciously engage in self-talk, you essentially talk to yourself. This can be literal, talking out loud, or figurative, thinking to yourself. Positive self-talk builds you up, addressing your capabilities, positive traits, and worth as a human being. In class, if I would have been there, I would ask, you know, when in the performance he did this thing. Continuing improving your self-concept, personal growth. Personal growth refers to the process, and I highlighted process there a little bit. Right? It refers to a process of strengthening your self-awareness and trying to live a life consistent with your values and your capabilities. And I italicized the process because it's not like a quick fix, not a simple small thing. Right? It's a process of doing numerous things, right? And probably doing them consistently, constantly, all the time, repetitively, right? It's a process. Consistent with your values. So I'm going to talk about values a little bit here. I wrote down the 7 Army values. It kind of spells out the word leadership. Makes it easy to remember, right? So first one being loyalty. He's loyal to his family, right? This goes in with his values. He's loyal. He has a sense of duty to take care of his father and those who are vulnerable. Respect. Right? He even says it, like he doesn't want people to be afraid of him. He wants respect, like true respect. And Batman, right? Batman doesn't do any of the things that he does for profit, really. I mean, even though he's rich, but Batman is kind of his hobby, right? It's his alter ego. He's a do-gooder. All Batman wants to, and he says, all Batman wants to do is save people, maybe pay off Bella's bills one day and be happy, right? And even in that line when he says that, maybe pay off Bella's bills, that's still selfless. He wants to help someone else, right? And then he continues to say, and I roll into honor, and maybe like mad famous for real. Like he wants to be recognized. Like he wants to, you know, he wants to feel that honor. He wants to be recognized for doing these selfless things. Some integrity. No one sees Batman, and integrity is doing what's right even when no one's looking, right? In the absence of others. And personal courage, fighting off the good for nothings, right? That's another one of his values there. You know, when he was facing the guy with the gun, you know, and then finally he gets and he says, I'm gonna talk to him in a language that he understands, right? But still, when the other guy had the gun, he's the good for nothing. He's still, you know, displaying personal courage against somebody who has, you know, a lethal weapon. All right, and then we're going to go on to reappraisals. Reappraisals occur when you change your interpretation of something that happened in your life. Now, listening to this story, there's a lot of, you know, reappraisals happening here. He's turning isolation into solitude. Remember, we're talking about a little kid here, and he's talking about, wrong way. You know, he's talking about being all alone. I'm watching, I'm waiting, right? Which means he's probably left in the corner all day, or in the house all day, or running the streets all day, neglected by his father, who's, you know, out there doing his job, but also spending half of his paycheck on booze and the other half on women. So, yeah, he's turning that isolation into solitude. Solitude is something that's positive, right? He's feeling comfortable being alone. So he's taking neglect into feeling comfortable. He's taking being an outcast into vigilance and omniscience, right? He's talking about like a gargoyle out there watching. I hear everything. I think the last statement in his talk is, I hear everything, right? So he's taking these negative things, and it's kind of that self-talk as well as the reappraisal. This is the verbalization of his reappraisal for the negative things in his life. Like neglect, he turns into mystery, right? No one sees Batman, but really nobody's seeing him as a kid. Another important consideration in identity management is self-disclosure, or the intentional revelation of important information about ourselves that others are not likely to know. And he does that in a bunch of different ways in this piece. He says dad spends half his paycheck on 40-ounce bottles of beer, the other half on ladies, right? He's openly admitting that his dad's an alcoholic. He frequents prostitutes, stumbles home drunk. He lives in a poor part of town. He has, you know, he's not proud of what he wears. He gets, you know, he has scraps. God knows if his dad's stumbling home after, you know, seeing a prostitute, what did that kid have for dinner, you know? What did Jesse have for dinner, or the original author who wrote that piece? You know, there's a lot of things being disclosed here that he's not just coming out and saying, right? They're all inferred through the story and this character as Batman, who's watching out for the janitor man. Communication context provides guidance about appropriate behaviors. Adam Driver discusses how acting is a way for combat vets to express traumatic experiences, and through the spoken word, this is how Jesse reads Marco Ramirez's I'm Not Batman, right? Through not cinema in this case, but theater itself, right? Theater can be plays, theater can be cinema, it can be a bunch of things. So this is kind of in the theme of what Adam Driver was getting at, with people being able to get out and get some of the traumatic experiences out of them, to be able to verbalize them, to vocalize them, to display them on stage, to act things out. It might not be exactly the same as the trauma that they went through, but it's a way for them to get it out of themselves. And if anybody's familiar with working with trauma, that's a very important part of dealing with trauma, is getting it out. That's why it's healthy to have dreams, so your brain can process the trauma that someone has been through. That's why dreaming is very good for trauma patients or people who've been through stuff like that, even sexual trauma, traumas as a kid, like all of these different things that happen to different people, and everyone handles them in different ways, right? So one thing triggers someone might not trigger me, and what triggers me might trigger you, and our responses are all going to be different as well. I digress. Communication context, right? And I believe we're coming up on the end here. That is the end of my presentation. I broke the 2 to 3 minute rule. I apologize for that. I want to make sure I'm getting my $1,800 worth out of this class. I appreciate it. Here are my references. All the references were taken from our textbook, and everything referred to was the YouTube video, and the other little tidbits that I ad-libbed is from inside here in my 40 years of doing stuff. I apologize I can't reference every single little thing. If you have any questions on where I got information, I'd be more than happy to locate that and give it to you, or if it's a personal experience, to share that stuff with you. I appreciate it. Sorry I wasn't there. Thank you very much.